there's so many beautiful things going on. Love seeing the meditation initiative so that the Dark Tower of Haydn is functioning 24/7. That's beautiful. And today I want to talk a bit about the function of Haydn in the global situation, and also how to live through the apocalypse. So that word apocalypse has got me lately, and because so much of what's going on is apocalyptic, and of course to many people what apocalypse means is the end of the world. The world is ending, but apocalypse really means revelation. In fact, it's about stripping away, uncovering. It's a cosmic striptease. So the soul of the world is gradually stripteasing the personality to reveal something. So I want to talk about that process and how we can play our part in that process. And it's a little bit like, maybe you have brothers or sisters or somebody or you at a certain point in your life that, said, oh my God, the end of the world has happened. I've just lost my job, or my relationship's fallen apart, or I've got really sick. And of course, you have to listen to that because it's emotionally very real for the person. But there's a part of you inside, if you've done your soul work, that is like, yes, thank God. You've lost your job. I was wondering when that would happen. You got fired. You know what being fired means? It means being fired. You've been fired up. Something is going to emerge now. But of course you're like, oh yeah, that's terrible, because you're commiserating, because you're a good person, and at that point they experience love as emotional commiseration. But your soul's not commiserating. Your soul's cheering. So that's the difference between the end of the world apocalypse and the celebration of the soul of the world revealing itself. So part of what's going on the planet is the beginning of a decade-long process, or continuation of a decade-long process of striptease. And of course, what happens in your own life when you're going through that process of soul revelation is it looks like the world has somehow read your secret journals and knows exactly how to destroy you, right? It's that feeling of like, oh my God, who knows that was the very thing? Like, I've had some experiences that were like tailor-made in some alternative universe to strike to the very heart of me, and of course I interpret, paranoiacally that somebody is doing it to me, but it's me, it's me that's done with a certain pattern. I've outgrown a certain pattern of my own development, and of course I know exactly where the bodies are buried, so I give that information to others. This is the Twin Towers coming down, and people are like, but we exploded it, like the government, da-da-da. But it's like, it doesn't matter what the mechanism is. The truth is that at a certain point in our evolution, we want the towers to come down. We need them to come down, because that's how we're going to grow to the next stage. If we had a wise soul evolution planet, we might not have to do it in such a crisis-filled way. Then we might actually have wise people who knew that we were going through a process and help us, midwife us into the soul. So the planet, the whole of humanity, is going into that apocalyptic time. And so the transmissions today, really both filled me with dread for the part of my emotional body that's connected to the emotional bodies of people that I love, and all of the things that are going to happen, and thrilled my soul with actually the apocalyptic power of what is going on, of how much actual freedom is going to come through the other side. So part of that transmission was the part of the mechanism for the way the soul is going to reveal itself in the world. And that revelation is the same thing that happens for you individually. Gradually, your personality gets over its initial paranoia that something is failing. Like in my own life, for example, at 30, I was, at my Saturn return, I was trading financial markets for a good reason. You know, I was creating the money for the future schools and blah, blah, blah. And so I had, you know, much ill-gotten gains from using the cleverness of my soul to manipulate financial and futures and so on and have all this money. And when I first started doing it, nothing that I could do would go wrong. Like the Midas golden touch was there. I thought that I was a top gun, you know, like everything I did produced money, and I had $10,000 lunches, and, you know, like I knew that I was sitting in some superpower. And then it started to go wrong, you know, like at a certain point, I'd nailed that, and then it began to go wrong. And when it began to go wrong, it went as wrong as when it went right. Like precisely wrong. Like so much to the point that I got paranoid enough to start doing the opposite of whatever I thought that I wanted to do, because something was tricking me. I was tricking myself somehow. Like, so who knew that picking up the phone at that precise moment would cause the maximum disaster to my financial wealth? Like, I began to think that someone was like, you know, in my head figuring shit out and like doing it to me. Well, it was me, you know. A deeper part of me was like, yes, I've trained you in this, but now actually the fundamental issue underneath it, which is your lack of trust in the universe to be a friendly place and your desire to work it all out yourself, has to be let go of now. So the very thing that lit me up earlier on was now destroying me. And of course, like all good people, I resisted it to the end. My fingernails had to be taken out of the dead corpse of my old self, really, as I clung on to dear life. Got down to like $2,000 living in a van, you know, like trying to figure out what my world. I'm so glad that happened. That was an apocalyptic time in my life because it stripped me away. So that kind of, once you really get like, there's an intelligence in my destruction. And it's benevolent. Once you start to get that there's a benevolence behind it, then you start to go with the program. Then you start to like surrender into the program and go, oh, okay, right, take my money, fine, there must be something else happening. Oh, I'm sick. I wonder what's underneath that. Oh, that relationship's gone. Well, I wonder what will come up in me now as a result. So you start to get, yep, destruction is going on around me. I don't seem to have reached the bottom yet, but I kind of have surrendered to the fact that it's a reasonable process. Even if I've got cancer and I'm dying and I'm wrestling with that, I've kind of got to a certain point that I've surrendered that even if I do die, it's fine. And if I don't, then it's fine. So we all have our versions of that apocalyptic process in our personal development because that's how our soul shows up. It's a shame that that's how it needs to happen for most of us. And we want to live in a world where for future people, it won't have to happen in that way. But right now, that's kind of the way. Because the personality of the earth, like, learned control. And it learned control by having deep fears of nature. Because nature killed it, and nature gave it diseases, and, you know, so basically the whole civilization is built on underneath controlling our world so that nature can't get us. And that control has been useful. Like a whole lots of developments have brought humanity to here, but we don't know how to let go of that control. And so the soul is coming to try and say, let go, let go, let go, let go. And we haven't let go and haven't let go and haven't let go for like decades now. So now the soul is like really like, you know what, I don't want to have to dom you personality, but I'm going to dom you as much as I need to. And basically the way I'm going to do that is by letting go of protecting you from the consequences of your own actions. So it's not like the earth is angry with us and so it's giving us the virus and other things, or God is punishing us. It's not that kind of apocalypse which comes out of the collective emotional body. It's just the soul of the world saying, okay, hands off now, going to leave you to the consequences of your actions, and help you when you ask for help. And also reveal the intelligence of the intervention. So in other words, just as much crisis as you need, not more. And then when you give up and surrender, then things will turn out good until the next crisis. So, but that takes time, and humanity is going to be decade. It's already been in process for a while, but this is the intense decade. So the thing is, it ain't over. It's not like a virus that the medical society and everyone will finally get to repress and then everything's good again. Like, it's going to continue. And it's going to continue one way or another until we really get that there is a divine intelligence helping us to surrender now. The humanity needs to surrender. So that in that process, just like in my own process and probably your process, desperation comes up. Things are falling apart and you're trying to hold them together and you get desperate. And in that desperation, there's a lot of urgency, a lot of trying. And the personality has to exhaust all of that before it surrenders. It's very hard to surrender what has worked for us. Because we know it's worked, and if we want to just keep doing it harder, we do it harder until we're exhausted. And then we surrender. So we're going to go into a period of that that's going on in the world, and part of the trick is how to be compassionate to that, but not get enrolled in it. Not get enrolled in the drama. And some of the voices of that drama are going to be strong. Like one of those voices is going to be, you know what, in order to get out of this crisis, or the crises that are happening, we need more control. We need you all to stay at home, all to be locked up. We need everybody together. Okay, so this is the personality's job of trying to create uniformity. And it's actually healthy at a certain point because it's trying to get all of the parts of humanity together, operating together. But it's also counterproductive in the sense that it truly believes that the best thing is if our best science and our best politicians can tell us all what to do. So that's one side of it. And the other side of it often is the rebellion, which is just as like, we can't go with the police state and the tattoo on the thing. We need to overturn civilization and we need to get rid of these evil, Illuminati or whatever it is. It's the rebellion side. So those are the two voices that are going to be loud. And they're both fighting for good things as well as bad things. One's fighting for the independence and the alignment of the human spirit, and one's fighting for the protection through systems of control and good thinking and so on that help integrate the personality of humanity. But there's another place, and that other place is that monadic place, that dark center that is only revealed when you've integrated soul and body, mind, or personality. That dark light's only revealed behind those two when you have some degree of integration. So, one of the beautiful things about Haydn is we're a little microcosm of that. We're a little fractal of that. Even in our, wrestling with the processes of structure and, self-evident emerging of leadership and so on, that's a new model of power. And it contains both those things. Even the 3 hours work, that's Saturn. That's basically saying you've got to do your food and rent. Some things you've got to do even though you may not be inspired to do them. You've got to do them for survival. Now, ultimately, it would be wonderful if those things were soul-inspired and full of juice and life and creativity. But even if they're not, and until they're not, you've got to do them. So that's the part of the world personality that has learned to control. And the parts of us that are in rebellion are often the kind of teenage parts that are like, I don't want to. Because I don't want to have to do anything. No one tells me what to do. Those parts actually need to be disciplined because they're rebellious. But then the higher parts are the parts like, okay, I'll do what I have to do, but actually my life's not about that. My life's about creativity and juice and inspiration and flow and so on, and I'll bring that through into the things that I have to do. And then I'll spend the rest of my time doing amazing stuff, so eventually so much stuff will be coming through that other stuff that other people will do the things that have to be done, or I'll get paid to do the things that I have to be done. So this is evolution. It involves Saturn and Jupiter. It involves the things we have to do, like the Merkaba, and the things that we love to do. So the same process happens here that we're working with here fractally around how do we do power and structure? How do we have enough structure not to stifle everything, but enough to actually make sure shit gets done? How do we do creativity and synergy? How does people emerge and then find other people and spark off each other and generate and create new things? How do we do money that's an abundant flow of energy? How do we work with the land in such a way as that it increases the abundance of the life force that's coming from the earth? All of these things we're busy experimenting with as part of the other side of the apocalypse. But the apocalypse is still happening, and it's going to happen more and more globally. So Haydn has a particular role in that process. And one of the beautiful things about that transmission today was this connection with his Tibetan master saying, look, last time I told you back in 2001 when Haydn was founded, and it's in this Mercury transmissions, he said, look, the crisis that humanity goes through is precipitated by the soul. And one of the advantages of talking to someone who's part of the soul of the world is that perspective. It's a bit like if you were in the crisis of, if I was in the crisis at 20, 28 or 29, and I could have had a chat to my soul would have been able to tell me, you know what, this crisis where you're doing everything wrong, it's designed for something. It's trying to teach you something. If you learn the lesson, you don't have to actually go through all of the process. So the precipitation of the crisis back in 2001, and the way that it's explained to me is that the crisis is produced by what's called initiates of the 6th degree. Now what that is beings who have got to this level where their resting identity is. So they don't need to have a physical body, they can produce one if they want, but they're operating at the monadic level, which doesn't mean that they're in touch with the monad, it means they are, you know, their natural state is to be there. From that level, they have options about whether they're on Earth or not. And so they choose every 49 years a particular pathway in cosmos. And many of them leave Earth incarnation at that time. But whatever pathway they choose means that as energy goes out, so as those beings like Kundalini of cosmos leave this plane, and it said the Buddha, for example, when he left, he agreed to come back every year. You know, back, left, like it's all illusion really, but the clothes that we call the earth, he comes and has a chat every year for 6 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever. So wherever you go, you open a doorway for energy to come in. So the path that they chose was the path of Sirius, which is the 4th cosmic path according to hierarchical teachings. That meant that the energy coming in that was going to precipitate the crisis for humanity, for the body mind of humanity, was the energy of freedom. Because that's the particular energy that the path to Sirius brings in. And it's linked to the American soul because America's, you know, birth chart is around the independence, 4th of July, that lines up with Sirius. The energy of the Aquarian soul also carries this energy of freedom. So America's implicated, you know, by 2025 in this process globally. And everybody's implicated by this particular energy of freedom, which is designed to pull the soul away from form. Like that's what the energy of freedom does. So as that washes through the system of this 49 years, it abstracts consciousness identified with form, which is mind, emotion, and body, and it pulls it back into the realm of pure awareness. So that's the mass initiation of humanity by this river running through the soul personality that starts to pull pieces out, pull souls out of incarnation and into the Buddhic plane, into that plane of pure awareness. So as that energy pours in, the way that it was poured in was by using this energy of freedom. And what was told to me back in 2001 was before the Twin Towers went down that the decision was made from the soul of Earth to give humanity freedom. And what that actually means is giving them the cosmic energy of freedom through the field. But what it meant practically was that point of saying, all right, enough education has happened. Now the personality of the world has to decide. We're pulling back from influencing them. Now the personality of the world has to decide, is it going to keep going its materialistic path? Or is it going to choose to ask for help from the soul? And that decision was said to be like, it could have been an irrevocable final decision. It's a bit like somebody, given free will, decides to use it for self-destruction. So, and what was said back in 2001 was either humanity will choose its materialistic path, in which case large sections of humanity are likely to be wiped out, or it will choose the soul, in which case almost immediately, meaning over the next 25 years, the soul of the world will land, will materialize. So that's a huge polarity. And so what was coming through in the transmission today is that even though it hasn't been seen in the world yet, humanity has chosen the soul. Humanity has made the choice in the inner world for the soul. And how do we know? One of the ways that we know in the fractal universe is because Haydn's back on the physical plane. What happened in 2001 was when that decision was made, it immediately precipitated a crisis. One of the outpicturings of that crisis was the Twin Towers coming down and the war on terror and everything. That meant the energy field was so gripped in the world that places like Haydn, which were going to land, couldn't land anymore. The fact that they are landing now and flowering and that the transmissions can come back again is the sign itself that the soul of the world is fast materializing now. So the beautiful thing about that is being able in the core to rest in the peace of that victory. While it's still playing out there in the world and everybody is caught in that expression of what's going to happen, to be able to be in a place of peace, that all is well. I mean, all is always well at the monadic level, but that peace is always there, even if the personality has been totally self-destructive. But the fact that the soul and the personality are going to come together, and that the next few decades is going to see a fast emergence of the soul of the world, is a cause for peace and joy and celebration. And that's one of the things that the world is looking for places like Haydn for. The same as if you're talking to your parents or your siblings or whatever, underneath everything that they're saying and all of the conversations, what people's souls are looking for is it going to be okay? Like, am I okay? It's a plea or a call underneath everything for some degree of security in the uncertainty. And that security can't be like your life's going to work out, but the security can come from a soul that's vibrating that peace. Because that's what the soul is looking for. It's looking for that peace. So Haydn as a dark tower, the most important thing it's radiating into the world is that place, that there is something on the other side of the apocalypse. And that love is not coming through and being with them in their apocalyptic journey. Love is living what's on the other side of it, leaving people to their karma, because their karma is an important part of their awakening process. But living what's to come and transmitting that, because the transmission of that in the field is what allows people to have faith, even though they can't see it. And they have faith because they're connected. In the same way that people used to do that through the death portal. Talk to Aunt Martha who's died, or because love is eternal and it goes through the doorways, that there's someone to go to on the other side that will help you in a time of crisis. Well, that other side, people can reach through the veils to people in incarnation on the planet who have already passed through the portal. So the importance of being able to hold steady with what's coming and radiate that into the world in such a way that it's available to other people. And in particular, bringing it all the way down to here now, between now and June 21st, it's an important time to prepare that radiation. However you're doing it, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through videos, whether it's through writing, it can be visible, invisible, however it is, it's a radiation of that energy, which gives people the courage and the faith to meet the crises that they're in with an understanding that there's something on the other side of it. It's a functional transmission of hope because there is somewhere to get to. So June 21st is this incredibly rare, never happened before alignment of all of the energies of our particular galactic cosmos, from the galactic center to the sun, to the earth, to the moon, all lined up on an eclipse, on a solstice. And in the occult cosmology teaching, it said, if you ever see that, that's a sign for mass initiation of humanity. Like it's a sign for the masses. So given that we're in this mass process of the coronavirus, given that we're building towards that over the next just 6 weeks, then this is the time to have that energy go out. The energy of where we're going. And the same process of like helping people through that fear of death to come from their mind and their feelings into their heart, to build a life that's based on the core of their heart. That is not just something for workshops now, that's something that's happening en masse. And so we're all facilitators in our own parish, which is our families and our friends and our students and the people that we have connection with in the world. We're all an important point for them in this workshop. So shifting our awareness from the small game that we're in to the planetary game and starting to consciously play that in our individual lives and then also in this our group life at Haydn. And of course it's going to happen anyway, that we're just doing it, but if we're conscious of the fact that we're doing it and we consciously understand the importance of what we're doing to others, then we can be more efficient in it. So there's lots of different things that are already starting, synergizing, and there's lots of things planned for the future. Like there's lots of little seeds that I know about that are growing in this field and this field connecting with other fields. And so one of the things that we're going to do on Wednesday nights in the temple is make time for the wonder of synergy. In other words, that even just in this little field, the operation of the future is through the magical process of resonance with other beings. Who should I be talking to right now? Not like who should I be setting up long-term relationship with, but just who should I be talking with right now, in this moment, this week, this month? Like who's got magic that comes together with my magic to produce more magic? And that's a process of listening in, of feeling, and having your antenna resonating to like, how should I be connecting with others? And how should I be being arranged by something wiser and more intelligent that can reveal how I can be even more effective in my soul work in the world? So Wednesday night's kind of like a purpose dating synergy place that once a week we can throw everything up and see like, well, who should I be hanging out with now? And in a deeper way, that's the fractal. In a deeper way, part of the gift that Haydn has is this capacity to have connection with the inner worlds. That's what allows us to have hits, which is downloads, uploads, realizations, revelations of what to do next. So the living word doesn't guide us with a mission statement, it guides us next and next and next. So how does Haydn be a transmitter of that life force into the world? And if we're a fractal of something, how does that fractal all of a sudden flow out into the other fractals that are forming? So we're talking about ways of trying to make the mandala a more virtual process that other people can connect in. We're talking about having, instead of these workshops that were going to happen on the solstice, having gatherings all around the world. We're talking about finding ways to introduce the core of what's happening here as a transmission. But the most important thing that's happening here is not so much the technology or the practices and so on, it's the energy of connection to the soul of the world. It's a process of holding an alignment that allows that dark energy to come in and ground us and awaken the energy of the earth. How does that transmit out? How do we have this dark web going out into the world? So one of the practices of that is meditation. And so I want to invite you, to those of you who want to on a Wednesday afternoon after transmission, to do some meditation practice and training. I know a lot of you are meditating in the turret and have your own meditation practices. And one of the things that we work with at the core group here at Haydn is how, as a field, to start coming under deep impression and to take a group initiation together. And that involves, part of that involves meditation. And the particular 3 types of meditation that people, relate to those first, second, and seventh rays. Some people work more through the bodies, so that if you can get the bodies ecstatic, and if you can access the energy of the dark light through matter, then the bodies itself become so vibrationally ecstatic that automatically downloads soul consciousness. Okay, so vibrate matter and soul will land. And then when matter and soul come together, then the dark light can be revealed. So some people, that's more their path. Other people, it's consciousness, like grow consciousness, develop consciousness, expand consciousness. That will gradually vibrate down and lift the vibration of matter, and you can also expand it up to the monad. That also works. And some people do the monadic path, which is go to the dark. Go to the dark, download that. That blows the heart and the base center, and eventually consciousness and matter respond. It doesn't so much matter which one you do, and it pays not to get stuck on the path, because you probably have developed one anyway, just by the way you have made your journey. What matters actually is the integration of those 3. The integration of those 3 kinds of practices, so that your embodiment and your matter and your consciousness and your life force are all integrated together. So part of the meditation practice is to help with that process, but also begin to shift your center of gravity. Okay, and the primarily center of gravity that most of us are in, that most of humanity is in, has got a lot to do with their solar plexus. Okay, and a lot of the stuff that we work with still in terms of personal process is because we're trying to resolve things in our emotional fields. And of course, there's many ways you can do that. You can move the emotional fields, you can transmute the emotions, but the meditative approach or the esoteric approach is shift your center of gravity higher. Okay, and ultimately shift your center of gravity from being even in the heart, which integrates your 7 chakras, to shift your heart to the heart of the soul, the heart of Buddhi. And that's not an abandoning of your chakras, it's a transcending of them and then including. So you start to be able to run your whole system from a more refined place. So you can still drop through your chakras, but you're not stuck into them. And you're not stuck in your mind or your emotions. So this process often for people is also a sense of where they're used to complaining about that change. Okay, so what happens is that the energy that's in your solar plexus doesn't want you to leave it. Okay, this is the same as the energy in the world that wants you to come be sympathetic with the whatever is going on. So when you first try to really pull your energy and hold it in a higher place, often you'll get a lot of complaint from your solar plexus. It doesn't want you to abandon it. So the series of meditations, one we call meditation 1, which is to be able to lift this into the heart and then to the crown, and then from that place to be able to go back and bring this energy up. So you haven't abandoned it, you've just transcended it and then come back for it. Okay, but it doesn't want you to leave it at all. It's like a frightened child saying, don't abandon me. Well, sometimes it's like, I've got to go to work, but I'll come back for you. So gradually lifting until you can stably hold energy in your causal body. And from that place, you can include all the way down to your base, but you can also include to the monad. Okay, so now you can sit in the heart of a much bigger system. You're not in this heart, you're in this heart. And from that heart, you can throw energy down into the base and into matter. So all we're trying to get through meditation is we're trying to have at least an integration between being incarnate, being in your body-mind, being grounded in your body, and transcending it so that you can be in Buddhi. And that's the place where the magic really happens. And that's the place where Haydn doesn't matter that we are here in New Zealand in the Manawatu, because we're global. The plane of Buddhi covers the earth. So the fact that there is an anchor point here, if we can get meditatively, stably into Buddhi, we can transmit what's been grounded here into the world. And it's way more powerful because there are many people in Buddhi and ascended masters and so on who can be in Buddhi and transmit there, but they're not incarnate. So therefore they don't have the power of matter. And it's the power of matter that actually allows for the manifestation process to happen. So in the past, people would often go up to the heights and then they would want the support of matter to support them. But if you can go to the heights and stay in the body, you can support through matter as well as through awareness. Then other people feel both those energies. It's coming through the earth itself, it's coming down under the earth and back up, and it's also going over the earth through Buddhi. So the experience to someone receiving energy that way is that they're loved by father and mother. They're loved by matter and they're loved by consciousness. So learning how to be in meditation and learning how to work esoterically, which doesn't mean that we don't also function physically and in embodies. It means we are also functioning consciously on other levels, intentionally, and using the power of group. So after we finish, I'll just take some questions now. Those who want to do some of that practice together, so that when you're meditating, you're synchronizing that meditation and you're also doing the meditation that you need to do that's right for you and your style in the group field. So how many people would be interested in doing group meditation processes together? Okay, great. So first of all, just any questions or comments about the process of humanity's apocalypse and Haydn's role in it and our journey here? Yeah.
I just have that question, that piece you just mentioned around the solar plexus and how we do need to leave it and how it can have a panic, basically. Yep. How do you navigate that panic as you're moving up?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's that there's a meditative practice, but you know, the outer would be like, how do you navigate working with your child who is desperately afraid of people and you've got to take them to school on the first day? It's like your child doesn't want to go, it's going to have a temper tantrum, it's like it knows it's the end of the world to it, but you know that that school is going to open up all kinds of things. So you might have to deal with the temper tantrum, you might have to like hug and you know, let the child know that it's loved, and then you have to be firm and say, and we're going. And then when you're going, you know that even though you're dragging a resistant child, that actually it's going to be beneficial. So that's the outer. And you can feel that energetically as a process. It's so much easier to stay there and have a drama than it is to draw the energy up. Yeah.
There's this line on the mental bracket of the lower and the higher mind.
Yes, between them.
This idea that the lower mind is like the top of one triad,
yep,
and the higher mind is the bottom of another.
Exactly.
It goes up to the Buddhic and
yeah.
There's a distinction between the lower and the higher mind.
Yeah.
I'm curious about.
Sure.
Yeah, this piece on unconscious, that like the higher mind becomes like the unconscious of the higher thing.
Yeah, the higher mind is the lower part of the triad or the soul. And this is where people have mental breakdowns, because the concrete mind rules the personality and the higher mind is open to the soul. So in the world, for example, this would be the conflict between the best of our scientific materialistic knowledge that's saying from the top of the pyramid of the concrete mind, here's what we should do based on our best expert knowing, because the most important thing is what we know. Okay, and then someone like Einstein, who was more in the abstract mind or the higher mind, like his deep truth was under everything that he knew was uncertainty, and actually the greatest force in the universe was love. So abstract mind isn't full of certainty. Concrete mind is full of certainty because it's at the top of its pyramid. So that's the very place where humanity is going to have to break out of expert knowledge into the uncertainty, we know nothing, please fucking help us, oh my God, inspiration. So it's a very important point. Yeah.
The next decade that we've begun now, I'm curious to know, is this the work of the first Ray Lord that I've been reading about? Is that working behind the scenes, or is it some other process?
The Rays are always working behind the scenes because they're just ways of expressing the soul. It works in different departments, different ashrams. But in particular, the crisis over the next decade, centered on 2025, is a fourth ray crisis. And the fourth ray crisis produces harmony through conflict. And so what it's likely to produce is a very strong dividing line between those people standing for the personality of the planet on the mid-plane of the mental plane and those on the soul side. And also you'll find all of the religions coming out with their good and evil, apocalyptic, stories. It's already starting to happen, it's a clear division, which provides the opportunity for each person to choose what matters to them, what's true for them at the core of their heart. So that's what the crisis is for. It's not a crisis to join, okay? Even though there will be very powerful energies wanting you to join, because we're ending a sixth ray age, and the energy of the sixth ray is fanaticism and devotion and emotional loyalty and idealism. It's crusading energy. So the crusades, the final crusades will play themselves out in the world over the next 5 to 10 years, and they will try to enroll you. And your job is not to be enrolled, to rest in peace. Rest in the peace of what's behind that particular battle. At the same time, have compassion for the fact that people need to be in that, and it's productive because it's producing self-responsible humanity. Yeah.
Is humanity the main or only species that is part of the personality of the planet?
Yeah, it's said that the humans are the fourth kingdom. So the animals, vegetables, and minerals are also kingdoms, and there's 3 higher kingdoms. But humanity doesn't know about the 3 higher kingdoms when it thinks scientific materialism is the top, right? So if humanity changes, then the energy of the higher kingdoms can flow through to the lower kingdoms. So instead of man having dominion over nature, man is really just a conduit for higher energies to flow through, and for those energies from the other kingdoms to integrate. One of the key signs that humanity is in its personality is it's separated itself off from nature. And actually, the best of humanity is kind of at war against nature. Nature's seen as the energy that we need to protect ourselves from. And how do we preserve the best of that, which is so that we don't have polio and other things, but at the same time trust nature again that it's trying to support and help us. So the virus is a perfect example of that. Any other thoughts or comments or questions?
I have one on the vibrating and the future pace. Like
Vibrating?
vibrating like future paced.
Yes.
Yeah, of like the kind of challenges and navigating of if you're vibrating in that future pace all the time and living in that.
Yes.
And how the challenges, like I find that some people, it's a lot more easier, and so there's a lot for me of living there and then trying to come back and bring, but
Yeah.
like kind of navigating that and what's maybe, I don't know, speaking to that.
Yeah.
Being in that space for a longer period of time, or it's good to move back, or...
Yeah, well, it depends. Like some people, their tendency is more on the first straight line, which is like, I'm leaving that and I'm going to prepare a space over here and it's here when you're ready. Other people, it's like, I'm not going to leave you or just go at your pace, so that's an extreme example. How many people here already feel that tension between like family and friends and emotional love connections that they have out there and, the path that they're on? Okay, right. And is there an element of emotional manipulation in those relationships, right? Which is like emotional love is like, if you love me, it's the solar plexus. If you love me, you will care about me, which basically means you care about all of the dramas that I'm going through and you will take them seriously. Whereas if you're in the soul, you're like, I care about you and I don't give a shit about those things that are preoccupying you because they're actually part of a much bigger process that is involved in. So how do I love you, but at the same time not buy into your idea of how I should love you, which is an emotional projection of your need to not feel alone. So how do we do that? And for me, one of the most powerful ways of doing that is love them deeply in the inner and in my heart, so I can say no more thoroughly in the outer. Because a lot of the time when I don't say no in the outer, it's because I feel guilty. I feel guilty that I've found love and the people that I love haven't found that, and I want them to find that, and so I can feel their emotional call for me and I want to like somehow respond to that, and I feel guilty that inside me I'm thinking, fuck this, but actually, I'm supposed to be a loving son or brother or whatever. But if I can genuinely love them by understanding that their crisis is their crisis, it's partly a consequence of all of the decisions and the actions that they've taken in their life. And it's perfectly designed for them. And me actually helping them too much would be enabling. So I need to let them know that I love them, but I also need to let them know that I don't share any of the realities that they're currently living in, because then that gets them so pissed with me at first, but then gets interested into the possibility that there is some other reality other than the one that they're in. So we all have our process through that particular doorway, and at Kashitri Journeys it said that's the second degree, where there's a deep tearing between the kind of hot love of your emotional body and loyalty and the colder love of the soul, which sees a greater perspective, which doesn't confuse emotional bonding with love. Yeah. And you can help each other in that process too, because it's also a very painful process to choose soul and to be in soul tribe and so on, and still care about people who aren't there, but not be dragged into their lives. And also to really understand and believe in the power of the soul, that if you are meditating and holding the flame for other people, that matters to them. Like it mattered to you. If you look back in your own life, how many times did, like in my case, it was like Leonard Cohen or Herman Hesse or someone who left a trace in this world of a soul that resonated with mine. Or feeling inside myself when I had nowhere to go to, feeling that my grandfather loved me, even though there was no outer sign of it. Like we all have those paths on our journey, and we can be that for others. And it's actually much more valuable to be there for them that way than it is to show up in an emotional, manipulated way of how they want you to love them. Doesn't mean that, you can just replace all outer stuff with inner, but if you have the inner, then you can be much clearer in your outer relationships. So part of your meditation practice while you're here, and in the new world, is to find a way of including all of the people that you love that aren't here in a way that's appropriate for them. Yeah.